Welcome to the Sessions with Sessions podcast, and I'm your guest host, Brunetti. We're going to mix it up a little bit today, and we're going to flip things on its head. Today we have a special guest with us, the owner-operator of Sessions Ride Company, Mr. John Lalonde will be joining us. And
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Well, you're welcome. I think it's long overdue that we finally brought you in. John, we decided we're going to change things up a little bit today. There's a topic that you want to kind of share some information with everybody about. So we thought, why not let me grill you for a little while and bring the knowledge up to the surface. So, what are you here to talk to us about today?
Today we're going to go back and kind of revisit a podcast we did earlier, about 8 months ago, and we're going to talk about the bike industry again.
Perfect. So now that we are in, the beginning part of 2022, 24-ish months post-pandemic, or since the beginning of the pandemic, and why don't you give us a little bit of insight what's going on with the bike industry?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that seems to be the problem. The overarching thing is delays are still here. And in fact, they've gotten worse than ever. And that's something, it's going to be very surprising for a lot of people to hear. A lot of people seem to think, especially right now, in Canada and Ontario, at the time that we're recording this podcast, the all restrictions have been lessened. Mask mandates are gone. Vaccine mandates are no more. You can move around as you need to. Everyone's stoked, as they should be, but nothing's caught up.
Right. So what is there any specific aspect of the industry that you're seeing delays in more than others, or is it all the way
everything.
From new bikes, parts, like
absolutely everything? So we'll talk about bikes a little more in a second, but to give you an idea, we just placed an order with Jack Rue for the circus kits. So we're doing a Paris Dancaster race. We need to get some kits. Jack Rue is usually a 2-week turnaround. We order it. 2 weeks later, it ships out from Hong Kong, and we get it a day or two after that.
Sure.
We called them with a month lead time, and they're like, yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, China's shut down right now. What do you mean China's shut down? We're full open. How could they be? China has a zero tolerance policy with Omicron. So if there's Omicron in a town, if they have reported cases, they shut the whole city down.
Sure.
They shut down every factory. They shut down, everything gets shut down. So Jack Rue is waiting on green lights to be able to get the facility
production.
Open again. So even though stuff here seems to be going again, there's more shutdowns over there, which what's something that's important for people to realize is that there's a delay. Like Jack Rue's a very oddball example of something that gets air freighted in, and it's a 2-week turnaround. A lot of the times, if you're having like a bike part that needs to go on a bike, ends up on a boat, ends up going across, ends up having to get off. But it takes a year to get it to the other side of the country. So we're going to see another wave of delays, and we're still in the middle of delays.
Sure.
So we're a long ways away from things going to normal.
Is there any bike parts that you're starting to see show up a little bit more regularly? I noticed that some of your posts that you've had recently, you're starting to see some kind of random components coming in. How is that happening?
Very aggressive gambles very early in the pandemic. So bike parts are kind of funny. There's a lot of bike parts, and this is where we'll talk about bikes more, but bike parts themselves are kind of part of the problem because they come from all over the world. You get some bike parts coming from Vietnam, some parts coming from Taiwan, some parts come from China, some parts come from all over the place. So it makes it kind of a logistics nightmare. However, we have a lot of our suppliers have back order systems, so we can look at ETAs. We see that hey, this tire says it's coming in 6 months. When a customer walks in the door, if they say, hey, I would like to purchase a tire, and I don't have that tire in stock, and then I look and it's on back order for 6 months, a lot of places will go, okay, I can't get you that tire. So would you like something else or whatever? And then they move on with their life. What we've been doing is we've been stacking back orders.
Sure.
So as soon as we realize there's a demand for something, so a perfect example is Maxxis tires. Maxxis tires are effectively not landing in Canada this year. However, we placed back orders over a year ago for some tires. So some tires did show up this year. And it's
Okay.
not that, like, these are tires that were supposed to be here a year ago.
Right.
And they just started landing in Canada. But because we've had orders in the system for over a year, we're getting some stuff, which is super cool. It is not the case for everybody.
Sure.
So, and you can't go back in time to add back orders to your system. So if someone today decides that, oh wow, yeah, no, we do need some new DHRs,
Yeah.
you're gonna be a year, man.
So, and I think that's probably a really good point, right? So do people need to, and I think you probably mentioned this in the past, but need to be a little bit more flexible with things, right? Like what we have on the wall is essentially what we have, right?
I had
Like
a guy call
gonna
today,
be,
and he goes, I need a tire, a very specific tire. And I just burst out laughing. It's the way he said it. This guy had, right at the gate, it was no leniency. He just, hey, this is a certain tire. And I burst out laughing. I'm like, man, like, okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's a Schwalbe. And I was like, yeah, I don't have it. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, man, I got 2 Schwalbe tires here. I'm like, let's try though. What do you need? Magic Mary. Okay, one of these tires is Magic Mary. I need 27.5. It's a 27 by 2.8. Yeah, no, nothing. And he's like, oh. And I'm like, you want the rest of the SKU or anything? I'm like, no, dude. Like, it's like, there's no way.
Yeah,
and he's like, can you order it? And I was like, no. Like, it's not like...
You won't even be riding
like
27
like
by the
exactly.
time it comes
Like,
in.
showing up to a shop and requesting what you want
Yeah.
is not necessarily the right way to approach it. Showing up to a shop and asking what they have is a better way to approach it, right? Like, it's, I get guys coming in going, I want a double down DHR max grip. Like, okay, dude, like, I get it, but like, if someone comes in and says, what do you have in double down rear tires? Okay, now we're having conversations.
Yeah, for sure. And do you see that almost as an opportunity? Because a lot of people have probably been pigeonholed into like, this is the only tire I use, this is what it has to be, this is what it is.
We did see
now
that.
is it an opportunity for people to be like, oh, maybe like, step outside of the norm and try something new, right?
Dude,
like
chains.
Yeah.
So we had like 11-speed chains are infinitely backordered, like years. So we were able to get our hands on some Connex chains from Whipperman, and like, they're unbelievable chains. We just like, they're $90 11-speed chains, and like most people that are buying a $90 chain are buying a Shimano Duris, a Shimano Ultegra, like a high-end chain.
Right.
But these Whipperman chains are sweet, and you can like, they have a reusable master link, and they've got all sorts of these cool features. Well, they came out back ordered, so I bought a bunch, and I put them on a lot of the circus guys' bikes, and they're loving them. And it does really open up a lot of opportunities to find these, and that's an advantage that we have as a very small shop. Is I spend literally all day, guys. Like my fiance is just about ready to kill me because I'm like all night spending like on different suppliers' websites trying to find more suppliers, trying to find different stuff, weird stuff. Like it's all about these small little suppliers that you might not see in a lot of shops, and they might have the thing that you need that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, so you're just combing and looking through,
dude,
right? Yeah,
like
doing the deep
brake
dives.
pads for Shimano road bikes.
Okay.
Impossible. Like, so far impossible. Like, I had a brake leak on my bike where it was leaking brake fluid.
Yeah.
And I went through 3 sets of brake pads last year, and there's no more brake pads. I'm like, I'm running out. So I found this one little supplier that has BBB brake pads, which no one's ever heard of, and I don't care. They fit in my bike, and I bought 25 of them, and now I have them. So it's all about just finding these small little suppliers that have the right thing at the right time, but you got to scour for them because you got to search 50 suppliers every other day just to make sure you know what they have so you can find the right thing.
Yeah. So people that have had bikes on order have been sitting on wait lists for you. What is that looking like?
I don't have wait lists.
You don't have wait lists?
I don't have wait lists. So to give you guys an idea, so the first year when this all happened, there was we kind of had a feeling. We're very lucky. We're a very small store. I mean, for most of our listeners that have been in this store, if there's any listeners that haven't been in this store, you should really come by and have a coffee.
100%.
But
do that.
We deal with a lot of smaller brands, and because we deal with a lot of smaller brands, we get a very what I would call like a hands-on experience with these companies. We deal a lot with the owners of the companies. We have a very close relationship, so we kind of get some insight into how things are going. And when those guys are telling us totally candid that things are not good, we start making adjustments. Now, when the pandemic first started, there was some stores, I won't say who, but that were taking deposits on bikes. They're like, we have these bikes coming, we're going to take deposits. Now, what happens when those bikes don't show up? And that's what we were trying to figure out. It's a small business. If we're taking $1,000 deposits on bikes and they don't show up, how do I refund those deposits if we've sunk that cost into our operating costs?
For sure. And then what happens to that person?
What happens to them? So we were like, absolutely not, no deposits. We started a list. We started taking names on the list, and that's what we did the first year. It did not work out well, because what happens is, understandably so, when your name's on a list, you assume that you're going to get a bike at some point.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's not the case. You probably won't. And there's the demand was so high and the supply was so low that most people didn't get a bike. The second problem that came alongside that was, if, let's say I have a list of 100 people that want a medium hardtail. A medium hardtail shows up. I call the first person on the list. They don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we leave a message and to ask them to call us back because we have a hardtail. And then we hold the bike till the next day. And then we call the next person. But as soon as we call the next person, the way it always works out, the first person calls back, and now they're upset because, and understandably so. So it created this very complicated problem. We would sometimes have a bike that people are walking in every day asking if they could buy, but I have a list 100 people long, and I've had this bike for 2.5 weeks. And it created so much confusion, so much complications. So we said, you know what, no lists. So last year we did no lists, and it worked out way better. When bikes show up, we post that we have them. We have an amazing e-commerce website now. We post them on our e-commerce website. Pick up only. People come pick the bikes up.
Nice.
We move on.
Have you? So speaking of e-commerce, what's been going on in that sphere? Like, how's that been? How did you change that? What is it now?
So a lot of people like to shop from home. Right, they want the ability to see what the stores have.
Sure.
A lot of people are very hesitant to still walk into a store. Totally understandably so. So having that e-commerce platform allows us to have people shop, kind of get the idea. We also have a live chat option, so people can go through the chat, can kind of interact with our staff, and then oftentimes me, and then they can kind of get a taste of what's going on, and then kind of go from there. It also gives people to purchase stuff from the online, or if people are out of town, we can still sell stuff to them. Bikes get a little more complicated because a lot of bikes we have in our dealer agreement that they have to be built, pre-built. So we can't sell all of our bikes online. Also, if a bike is already built, to unbuild it and put it back in a box when we don't have bike boxes is like kind of a little complicated. So oftentimes we aren't shipping them depending on the situation. But I mean, the e-commerce thing's been kind of awesome.
Cool. Are you seeing like percentage of your business, like year on year, are you seeing like a lot of growth in that portion of it?
You're seeing a lot of growth, but it is definitely more catalog based, especially at our shop, right? Like there definitely is a certain vibe here that people are after, and people like to see the stuff online and then come in and have a coffee and talk about it and that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of stores that are seeing a lot of e-commerce. We're definitely more hands. People just, and it's cool to see because we didn't know what was going to happen. We thought, hey, we launched this e-commerce shop and everybody's going to buy online, but like people still really want to be part of what's in the store and the fitting process and all that. And like, I'm really excited about that because that's what we enjoy a lot. So we were adapted with the times, but people still want that hands-on experience, which we offer.
Well, they want the experience for sure. What about warranties? What's happening? Like, what is this doing to warranty?
Like some companies, and this is, so we, again, it's I guess it's easy for me to say because I can only see things from the way we're seeing it. We have a very hand-picked, selected like catalog of bikes. We only deal, so the same way a customer, when they're walking in, you always hear the nightmares of some guy bought some TV from some place that you should never go because the after service is garbage or the whatever. And when customers always gravitate to the place that they get the best service, we do the same thing with our suppliers. So if a supplier doesn't give us the support we need, we drop the supply and pick up a new supplier. So all of our suppliers are very hands-on. Because of that, we've been kind of able to pull rabbits out of hats all year. Our bike tech had a bicycle he picked up before he worked here from a company I'm not going to name, and he cracked the frame a year and a half ago. And then we processed the warranty because I know the rep because he's a friend of mine. He sells me some other products. So we were able to contact the company directly and say, hey, listen, we've got this frame for a bike mechanic that works in the city. We need this bike warranted. And a year and a half later, we're still waiting on frame.
Wow.
Those are the companies you want to stay away from.
Sure.
And it's so hard to tell because this year, there's no there is no frames. Like there's
Sure.
not. So if a company didn't forecast properly for frames, and they didn't, when they ordered their frames and they didn't order their extra 5% or 8% for warranties, they can't now decide that they need to go back and get more.
Yeah.
There is no more.
Right.
So we're starting to experience that. Like we're again very lucky. A lot of rabbits out of hats this last year for anything warranty related, and it's been pretty good. We haven't had any bikes sitting for long term, but we're very fortunate that way because the companies we work so closely with. But it's about making sure that you're purchasing not only from a company that's reputable and that has long-standing relationships, but also from a shop that has relationships that can kind of get a little bit of pull from the suppliers.
Perfect. So obviously, like coming into spring, like it's going to be like everybody's going to be very excited to get back on bikes, and all of that is kind of happening. What is it looking like right now for people to come in and get repairs on their bikes and tunes and those kind of things?
Repairs are good right now. It's crazy. I mean, like we're recording this right now on the last week of March, and honestly, thank God for the snowfall that just happened, because when it got really nice out, somehow or another we were booking 2 weeks, which was crazy for March. Usually we try to be a 1 week, try to get someone in and booked and out in a week. Last year we reached a point where we were 6 weeks, which is absolutely insane. So we've increased our capacity. We have more mechanics this year. We've been training mechanics over the winter, which is going to be great. We have a lot of parts, which is awesome.
Yep.
We're hoping we can stay on top of this year. If I can stay under 2 weeks all summer, I'd be stoked. I don't think that's going to be the case because I think the demand is still there. We've been tuning bikes all winter. We've been encouraging people to bring their bikes in all winter. We're a bike shop all year round.
Yeah.
And we're like this year, if I'm being honest, what's most important is that people stay on top of their maintenance. It is the year to get your suspension done. It is the year to get to clean your chain, right? Like people think stuff like that, oh yeah, I do clean my chain, but no, seriously, clean your chain. Put lube on your chain, because if you blow your chain and it's a SRAM 12-speed flat top chain, you are not getting another one. Right? If you blow your fork and you blow your damper up because you didn't do your seals, like you are not getting another fork, which means you're out of bike for the year. So staying on top of maintenance is super important. We're trying to stress that as much as we can with people.
Yep.
A lot of our big plans this year involve a lot of bike mechanic clinics to teach people how to do stuff themselves. Because this year, it's not the small parts. Like you will be able to find an 8-speed chain. You will be able to find a small cassette. It's like the niche parts and the high end stuff and the forks and the shocks. Like if people aren't on top of it, you will. I mean, it's the difference between being able to ride your bike this season and not.
Sure. Like that's just a reality that people need to realize, right?
And then if you decide you want to buy another bike because your fork's blown, you can't buy a bike either.
Yeah, so you're literally out.
You're literally out for the year.
So, and you talked about regular maintenance. It seems like a little bit more emphasis, obviously, on suspension this year. What does the lead time look like on getting suspension tuned, repaired? Like what does
Same
that all look
turnaround.
like?
We're doing that all in house now. So there used to be a time where we would take forks and shocks and dropper posts and send them across the country to have some guy rebuild them, but we do that all in house. So it's the same turnaround as a tune-up. So usually less than a week, you get your bike back, brand new seals. It's as long as the seals are available.
Sure.
Right. Like last year, if I said I had 20 Fox 34 seals in stock, that would be good for the season.
Yeah.
Now I'm going through 20 in a month. So like, I don't know, and I have a supplier that has the seals in stock, but I don't know how long they're going to have them in stock for. Right. And this is the issue, right? It's like what happens when we run out of fork seals and the guy blows a fork seal. So we're trying to encourage people as much as I can, like get your stuff in early, get your stuff done early. Like your suspension's supposed to be done after 50 hours. So if you put 50 hours on your bike last year, like it's time to do it now.
Right.
And like, you might have to do 100 hours on your bike this year before your next service because you might not be able to get seals. So like get it done as soon as you can so that you can maximize your length of time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's a really good suggestion. Okay, so what about like bike supply, like just general bike supply that's coming in?
That's the big one. There's not.
Okay.
That's like, so we just received a bunch of bikes, a bunch of cruisers, and a couple kids bikes from KHS. Talked to the guys from KHS; they're unbelievable. And he's like, yeah, these are the last of the 2021s. I was like, what do you mean 2021s? It's the last of the 2021s. And he's like, yeah, 2022s, yeah, at some point. And this is something we kind of suspected, and this is kind of something, you know, I try not to be like a doomsayer, but like I was talking about, you know, early 2021. I was saying, you know, this year, just looking at the ETAs, everything gets pushed back, and I'm like, you know, I think 2022 might be a leap year. It might be a leap year.
Yep.
And it's playing out that way for a lot of brands. Like DaVinci, half of our stuff, they give us ETAs and all optimistic ETAs. Half of them are September now. So like it's like 50% of the bikes are September, which like model year is end of August. So like 2022's become 2023 at that point. They just become next year's bikes.
It's just happening.
Like the DaVinci Troy is a 2021, 2022, and 2023 same bike. Yeah. They don't change anything. They just, when they happen to show up. Right, and then people come by and they're like, what year's this bike? And I'm like, I don't know, it showed up last week. Right? I don't know what to tell people anymore, because like it's like things are just not rolling out. You know, Fox comes out with a new fork, it's not going to show up on a bike for 4 years. So like I don't know what to tell people. And like this year there's a lot of brands that the bikes just aren't going to come in like at all. Like it's not even like 0%. So with that said, we're, you know, even less, you know, inclined to make a list or like take deposits. Like I see some places that are, you know, hey, we'll take your money in deposits, and I'm like, I don't know what you do with that. Like you
almost like it's a poor business decision to be sitting on it.
It's I don't know if it's these stops are maybe struggling and they need something to cover their operation costs, which makes it even a little more sketchy, because what do you do if you can't get your bike? But I don't know. I don't know what happens this year with a lot of places that, you know, put all their eggs in one basket, or they pick one brand that they go all in on. You know, we spread ourselves pretty wide, which is nice. But if you're a shop that, you know, there's definitely certain incentives for a store to pick one brand. You get a deeper discount, you get a, you know, free shipping on this and that to just buy all from one brand. But if that brand's not shipping this year, I don't know.
What does that look like?
What do you do, right? How do you start getting into anything? You know, we started entertaining doing used bikes here this year, but you can't even do used because the used bike market's wild. So I don't know how a shop could, if they're not spreading themselves wide, how they can make it work. So I hope those guys do, because I want all shops to succeed. But like, man, it's going to be a rough year.
It's going to be one of those years. Yeah.
It's going to be the worst year.
Crazy. Yeah, like, so it's just the fallout is happening now. Just this happened. This will be the peak of the fallout. This is the peak,
right? It's like fat bikes this year. Like, so to give people an idea, so in 2020, when we order bikes, I ordered bikes in September to arrive that spring. So that was our lead time. So September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So 6-7 months ish lead time, right? Is what they generally speaking need for a bike. Then when the pandemic hit, partway through the year, they made us order 2021s, like I think it was July. They were like, hey, listen, you got to order next year's bikes. All the bike shops were up in arms. We're like, what do you mean? You're making us order them like 2.5 months early? We can't do this, blah, blah, blah. But we all put our orders in. Then, 2 months later, in September, they're like, hey, we need you to order 2023s.
Oh, God, yeah.
We haven't even... So, like, it's so far now. So now we're looking at our orders for... We were able to get our order in. So basically for 2020 and 2019, if you're still following me, so when we had an 8-month lead time, we could order whatever we wanted. We'll go through the list. You pick your bikes, you order your bikes. If I said I want $6,000 in bikes, no problem. If you say you want $20,000 in bikes, no problem. If you say you wanted $1 million in bikes, no problem. To make it happen. Going into the next year, into the 2021 model year, which is now arriving. We're in 21, so now arriving. We were on a capped limit. So it was like, if you ordered $50,000 in bikes from this company, you can only order $50,000 in bikes this year.
Right.
So it was like you couldn't increase, because like what would happen is some shops would just order a ton of bikes and then they wouldn't be able to supply it and other shops wouldn't get them or whatever, so they just kept everyone the same, which makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Going into 2022, which hasn't arrived yet, like next year, it's on allocation. So the brands go, this is what you're getting.
Okay.
You are allowed to decrease the order.
Yeah.
You are not allowed to increase the order.
Okay.
And you're not allowed to change them.
Oh,
you're not allowed to ask for different colors or sizes. This is what you're getting. We've pre-picked them based on your past orders, and this is what you're getting.
This is it. Take it or leave it.
So, then that's what I mean. The way I get guys come in, and they're like, no, and I sympathize with them because I get it. But the guys come in and they go, hey, so I'm looking for this this Da Vinci hatchet they have on their website. And I go, yeah. And they go, you have it in stock? No. Oh, can we order it? Like, dude, I don't even know what to say anymore. That doesn't sound absolutely ridiculous. Like, I sound like I'm out of a fiction novel. Like, it's not even like the idea of ordering something is so far and beyond now.
Yeah.
Especially a bike. Like, I don't know what comes to a point where.
But I mean, I gotta think that this is probably pretty like across the board, right? I just don't think people are really talking about this, because I mean, you look at the auto industry is, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs,
there's
but
no cars on the lot.
There's no cars on the lot, right? Like, I'm sure that probably behind a lot of the in the inventory of the big box stores, like, there's just not a lot of stuff there, right? Like, you go to the grocery store now and you see like cereal shelves that are empty. Like, it just seems so strange, right? So I think that this is just going to be something that we're just going to have to start getting used to, that we're in the tailspin, and hopefully, starting next year, things will start to
ramp back. Things will get there, and it will. Like Shram said, that they have more parts on shelves than they've ever had, so that's optimistic. But what people, so if Shram had parts to sell, assuming they did.
Yeah.
Those parts need to get on boats, and those boats need to get to North America, and they need to get, first they need to go to Taiwan, they need to get assembled, then they need to put on a bike, then they need to go to North America, and then they need to get to bike shops. Now, if, let's say you're at a bike shop, and your bike is on the port, and it's off a boat, it's on the port, and you can't get it to you because there's not enough trucks to get the containers to you. Well, that's a problem. So then what happens when the port is too full of containers? When the port's too full of containers, they stop offloading the containers from the boats. And that's what we've seen, is that now you have all these boats that are floating off the shore, and they can't get the containers off, so they tell the boats just to, kick rocks in the middle of the water for a couple weeks until they get enough time to take them off. Well, what happens when, on the other side, they got too many boats? There are too many boats hanging around the stores. They can't have more boats. Well, then they stop sending the boats.
Sure.
If they stop sending the boats from overseas, from China, from Taiwan, from Japan, wherever the parts are coming from, then all these containers, if they're not on a boat, they're sitting in those shipyards.
Right.
What happens when they run out of space in those shipyards? If they run out of space in the shipyards, they have to stop producing stuff.
Right.
And if they stop producing stuff, you end up with a second wave of shutdowns. And this is the kind of stuff that creates these issues. I mean, we have all these problems all the way down the line. I remember at one point, We Are One couldn't ship bikes because they didn't have boxes. It's
like crazy things, right?
It's crazy. They didn't have enough containers to send bikes. And even if they could, some companies can't. So I talked to NS, and they're having to send, so NS Canada is having to schedule containers to be shipped from the factory in Poland to Canada a year in advance. Okay, so they're having to pick a date and schedule a container and pay for it. Now, they would usually pay $3,000 to $4,000 for a container. Now they're paying $20,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine how much that's, you're talking about inflation. So now they schedule that in a year in advance. Now all these bikes are in production. So they put, let's say it's 60 bikes on a container. It's more than that. Let's say it's 100. 100 bikes on a container. But there's not enough bikes to fill the container
Right.
because it didn't line up right.
Yeah,
The bikes got delayed, and now the container's ready to ship. They're ready. You're next in line here,
Yep.
NS. We're gonna fill your container today. You have 17 bicycles we're ready to ship you, and they're like, shit.
Yeah.
I needed 100. So how do you, like, then what do? Did they not take the 17 bikes? Or do they take the 17 bikes, eat the cost in the shipping, or
Sure.
pass the shipping on to the customer? Like, this is where,
Yeah.
like,
It's
the
getting-
water gets super, super, super muddy.
Yeah.
And it's not something like, guys, listen, I don't have an economics degree in, like, logistics and that kind of
Sure.
stuff. This is just me listening to suppliers and we're trying to run a small little local business, and we're trying to, have our ear to the ground and make decisions. So, like, how do we have bike parts? I don't know, gambles. Like, it's
Yeah.
straight gambling
Sure.
at this point, making guesses. And, like, how these companies make it work, I don't know. Like, how when a kid's bike costs, like, if the shipping cost goes up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on bikes, and your $10,000 bike goes from $10,000 to $10,200, okay.
Yeah.
If your $300 kid's bike goes from $300 to $600 because of shipping costs,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah. All of a sudden, no one's buying kids' bikes.
Also, no one's buying kids' bikes, or you shouldn't
Yeah.
buy kids' bikes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy a kid's bike at that price, and that's the problem. It's like when everything gets how expensive is too expensive,
Yeah. Like, what's the threshold before people just start walking away?
right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
What
we'll
about
see.
okay? So, what about like clothing? Are you you kind of mentioned Jackaroo and some of the things that are going on there? What is the like? Are you seeing your typical like turnaround time on clothing, or are they suffering that same kind of?
Surprisingly, no. Like, if I'm being honest with you, that's one place, and like, I don't know how. I've seen so when we place our orders, we've had some substitutions. So
Okay.
like, oh hey, you ordered that in gray. Gray's not gonna happen. We're gonna send you charcoal. Like stuff like that. I've seen that once in a while. I know Volcom, kind of cool. They so this was height of the pandemic, a year and a half ago, when things were kind of just starting to pop off. They had some huge delays. So what
Okay.
they did was because they were waiting on fabrics. So what they did was they went back through their archives of fabrics that they had that like hadn't been fully used up,
Okay.
and they created coats with those fabrics. So they're like
Like one-offs,
limited
so,
edition
like,
colorways
cool.
and stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like so like runs of 100 jackets instead of 1,000 jackets, and some cool things like that, which was kind of unique. But for the most part, like, and it's funny because you hear it from like brands like Kraft, and they're like, nope, 100% fulfillment, because that's always the question. Like, we're still ordering stuff a year or 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
And when these suppliers, these new companies, come to us and go, nope, man, we want to open you up. We want to sell bikes into Sudbury. We want to sell parts into Sudbury. My first question is, what was your fulfillment rate last year?
Yeah.
Like, were you able to get stuff to dealers? And a lot of clothing suppliers are like 100% fulfillment. And I thought that was a lie at first, but like, if I'm being honest with you, like,
Yeah.
not half bad. Like, I see pretty good. And I think maybe it's because you can get clothing done a lot of places. A lot of places, South America, they're doing clothing. A lot of places, like, you get a lot more. When you're
Yeah.
talking about like hard manufacturing with like not textiles, when you're talking about like making bike brakes, like, you gotta get done in Taiwan. There's not.
Sure.
I don't think
Just
you're
a
a little
little
more
more,
limited,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. Now I know we were having a conversation a little earlier today about some other goods. Are you starting to see things other than bikes that you're starting to have any issues with? Like, is there other industry, like other things that you sell that are starting to become an issue, or is it mostly bikes that seem to be the biggest concern?
It is literally everything. So like skis this year were hilarious. We sell backcountry touring skis. So like Alpine touring. So for Alpine touring you need a ski, a binding, a boot that all need to be very specific, and you need a skin that is cut to the ski.
Yep.
So we received our skins in the fall. And then we didn't receive the skis for quite a while. And then we received our bindings for some time. And then we received our skis. And then in March, we received our boots. And I'm like, none of these I could sell until I had the whole thing.
Hey, look at this.
And that's just, and then, so we, one of our suppliers, Alpine, they're an unbelievable boot company. They also sell skis. And So we placed our orders for next year, and they're like, so before I could even get my order in, they said, hey John, don't bother putting in a ski order because we've been reduced 80% in capacity. So only 20% of what they thought they could originally get as so you gotta keep in mind, like, it's not like they're no longer ordering what I order. They're booking time at a manufacturing facility, and they're saying, hey, I want 3 weeks worth of time, and then they go to the dealers and ask how many skis they want. Okay. They've been told that their capacity's been reduced by 80%, that they're only going to be able to produce this very small amount, and because I didn't get my order in super ultra mega early, that I wouldn't be able, they wouldn't taking additional orders. And I was like, oh, whatever, no skin off my back. They sent an email out today that said they've actually changed the 80%. It's no longer 80%. It is now 100%. They are getting 0 manufacturing time, and you cannot get skis from Alpine. So it's like, again, my sympathies go to any store that was like, oh, Alpine skis, I'm only going to buy Alpine skis.
Yeah. We're exclusive Alpine.
Because you're getting 0 skis next year. And like, and it's across the board, right? Like, you see this kind of crazy stuff all the time, and we're trying to make predictions, and then you run into these situations. Some shops do where, if you got 20% of your fulfillment for Bell helmets, let's say. I was talking to the Bell rep about this. Let's say you maybe got 20 to 40%. So some shops are going, okay, we're gonna raise our number so that the 40% is what we actually want.
Sure.
So like, they're trying to overshoot their number by 2 times what they normally order, and the rep is calling them like, no, listen, I don't think you understand that we upped our production. If you order 2 times the amount of helmets, I'm gonna sell you 2 times the amount of helmets. You can't order that many helmets. Because they don't know how, like, the shops don't know how to react. Like, do they overshoot it? And then if they overshoot, what do? That happened with trainers this year. There's a lot of shops with a ton of trainers that they can't move because they didn't get trainers last year. So this year they overshot it by a mile, and they ended up with too many trainers. And like, it's like absolutely wild. I mean,
it's a wild west right now, right? Like, that's the thing, right? Like, everybody's just trying to figure it out.
It's gambling. It's straight gambling. It's straight gambling, and like, it's I mean, like, it'll make or break a store at this point, right? You get a lot of these super small shops that, weren't necessarily, that I wasn't on the ball at the right time. I talked to, so when the pandemic first went down, like the first month, Ontario declared cycling essential. They declared that bike shops are an essential service. Quebec said no, cycling is not. Now, shops didn't know what to do in either state. So in Quebec, a lot of shops called Da Vinci and said, cancel all my orders, because they thought they were going to be closed all summer.
Right.
What they didn't think about was that everything being closed meant that people would be outside trying to ride bikes. So they canceled all their orders. So we had bikes were flying in, and we were calling Da Vinci, and Da Vinci's like, hey, all these shops canceled their orders. Do you want their bikes? And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, NS, one of my suppliers, they're in Quebec. They canceled half of the orders from the head company because they thought that, what are we going to do? Like, all these shops are going to close. We're not going to be able to sell any bikes. They just didn't predict it right. And like, how can you? You haven't, we've never been in this world before. We haven't figured stuff out. We're figuring stuff out day by day.
There's no playbook. You just winging it,
dude. We're bike shop guys, dude. Like you're saying, we ain't dealing with like venture capitalists. We're dudes who like smoke weed and ride bikes. Like, it's ain't like, we're trying to make these kind of decisions and figure this kind of stuff out, and we can only do our best with what we've got. So we've got a lot of customers now who are a lot more patient, and they started to figure this kind of stuff out, and they're just working with us, and we appreciate that. But it's going to take a while before things kind of come up from here.
Cool. Any last thoughts?
Best way, guys, I mean, like, number one is, and we've said this on the other podcasts, is do not feel bad. I mean, we have a lot of supporters for our store. Do not feel bad if you have to pick up a bike somewhere else. If you see something, if it's the right bike, get it.
Pull the trigger.
Just pull the trigger, man. Like the last thing we want to hear is, oh man, I'd really like this high tower I saw down south, but like, I just want to get one from you. It's like, dude, I'm not getting any high towers. So like, get the bike you have to get, and we will help you out every way we can. But please don't feel like we appreciate the support, but get the bike you have to get. And then second of all, make sure you're following every shop on Instagram and on Facebook, because when they do get bikes in, that's where they're going to post it. That's the way to see it fastest.
Sure.
And you need to be fast. So it's finding out when those bikes land, finding out what they have, and then finding out how you can get your hands on it. The best way to do it is through social medias. If you don't have social medias, call the shop. Call the shop every week. It doesn't matter. You're not bugging them. It's what they're doing right now. Call them every Monday. Set a reminder on your phone and call and ask, hey, did you get any bikes this week? And like at one point you will get an answer, and it'll be, yeah, I got some bikes. This is what I have. And then go in and see them. But we appreciate the patience, and I know it's inconvenient, but it is really the best way to make sure that you can get your hand on something this year. Same thing with, tires and chains, cassettes. They're consumables. They are things that, if you have an extra set of tires, you will use them at some point. Like if you have an extra chain, you will use that. Whether you use that in 2 weeks, whether you use that in a year, you will use that for the bike as long as you intend on keeping that bike. So it's not the worst idea this year if you can get your hand on a second chain, if you can get your hand on a rear tire for your bike or one spare tire, have those things kicking around, because this might be the year that you need it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got to say thank you, Mr. Lalonde. It's been a pleasure hosting you today.
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, it's taken 34 episodes. This is episode 34. We just really thought that it was time to bring you around, and hear from you for a change.
It's a pleasure. I really like what you've done with the place.
Well, it's taken a lot of effort. This pandemic's really, giving me a real ass kicking, but I've pulled through. So thanks, guys. That's it for us tonight. Really appreciate you hanging out and getting a little bit of insight from John for a change. So don't forget to make sure that you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform it is that you happen to be listening to us on. And from me, the co-host or the guest host today, I really just want to say we really appreciate everything that you do, and look forward to seeing you guys out there this spring. And come see us for a bike fit. We are up and running. If you have any questions, any comments, anything like that, specifically around the bike fits, please give the shop a call and come and see us. We really want to give you a hand. So that's it from us. Thanks, guys.
Okay, have fun out there, guys.